Hello, today we're going to do one of my favourite things to cook, and that's to bake some bread. And we're just going to start with a basic white loaf. So the first job is to take some plain white strong bread flour and weigh out 1 kilogram of it. To this, I'm going to add one of these little packets of yeast and then 2 teaspoons of salt. Now, to this, we're going to add 730 grams of cold water. I prefer to weigh my water rather than measure it, as it's more precise. Now, if you had a dough mixer, you could get that all in there and mixing. I actually have one, but I'm going to do it by hand because not everyone has one. But what you really do need is one of these dough scrapers. It's just a bit of plastic. It's incredibly cheap, but so handy. It saves you getting your hands very sticky and making a huge mess. So what we're going to do is get this scraper in here and just bring everything together into a dough. So I'm doing this late afternoon, or you could do it early evening, depending on your bedtime, and that will become relevant later on, because this is an overnight resting. The longer you rest it and the slower the rising, the more it breaks down the gluten and the more digestible the bread is, which makes it just better for you and more flavoursome bread. This has all now come together nicely. Now, I'm not quite claiming this is a no-knead method, but it's a very little knead method. All we've done is bring that together to a nice ball. Now, what we're going to do is take a clean bowl and get some olive oil in it. Our dough can now get scraped out into our clean bowl where it sits in the olive oil. Now, we're just going to move it around so it's coated in the olive oil and then flip the whole thing over so the oil's on top. Now we're going to get a cloth, put over the top and leave it to rest for 2 hours. So I'm doing this just before my dinner. So now I'm going to sit down, have dinner, relax for a bit, and I'll see you in 2 hours' time. Right, so this has now had a couple of hours and has risen nicely. So now I'm going to fold it 3 times. So what I'm going to do is pick up one side and fold it over. Spin the bowl, pick up another side, fold it over, and do that again. Actually, I'm going to do it a 4th time. Now, I'm going to cover it again and leave it a couple more hours. Then I'm going to repeat the process, leave it a couple more hours and do it again. And that's why I said you need to kind of plan this around what time your bedtime is. So if you're early going to bed, you might want to start this mid-afternoon. So this is quite a simple recipe, but at the same time, doing these extra steps makes it more complicated. You could just mix the dough, leave it to rise, shape it and bake it. But I find this doing it with cold water and letting it rise slowly overnight when doing these folds really improves it. So I'm not going to show you the next 2 folds because it's just repeating it, and I might well be doing the last one in my pyjamas and no one wants to see that. But I will see you in the morning. Good morning everyone, it's first thing in the morning. I've not even had a sip of my tea yet, but let's have a look at this dough. Oh, fantastic. You can see how it's really risen. So now what I'm going to do is flour the workbench, get it turned out, and we'll divide it into 2. So this is where our dough scraper comes in handy again. I'm just going to use it to cut this in half, no measuring required. Now we can shape it. So a bit of flour on top, and then what we're going to do is spin around, kind of pushing our hands under it to bring it round into a nice tight ball. I'm going to make two different loaves. So what I have is a baking sheet with a bit of baking parchment and a loaf tin. So I'm going to take my dough, flip it over, and then roll it up into a little sausage. Take my tin, get some flour in, get some flour all over the dough, because it's a non-stick tin, but these things are never perfect. And then we can get our dough in there. That one's easy. Now, same for the other one. So, upside down, and we're just going to roll it up and back on the baking sheet. Okay, so I said the first one was easy, the second one's easy too. So now, we're just going to get a cloth back over there. This is a special baking cloth. It's made out of linen. There's something about linen that means it doesn't stick to dough. But a tea towel can work if they're well floured, but sometimes they do stick, so just be careful. Anyway, we're going to cover these, and we're just going to leave them alone for 2 hours. So I'm going to go off and actually drink my tea. I've given this all a couple of hours. I've had several cups of tea, and you can see everything has risen lovely. Now, I've got the oven heating up to its highest temperature. And what I'm going to do is get a metal pan put in the bottom of the oven to heat up. Now, what I can do is take a tool called a lame, which is just a razor blade that's got a curve to it. And I'm going to put a slash in the top of both of these loaves. We need to create some steam in the oven. So I'm just going to get a bit of cold water, put in a jug and bring it over to the oven. So the idea of the slashing is the steam can escape from the bread out of the holes we've created rather than just bursting out of the crust. The water will go into that pan we've got heating up, and that will help form the crust as well. So now let's get the bread in the oven, the water in the pan, and bake this. So as I say, the oven's up to its maximum temperature, 250 degrees, and we're going to give it 10 minutes at that. Then we're going to turn it down to 200 degrees and give it another 30 minutes. So I'll see you in 40 minutes time. Right, the timer's just gone off, so let's grab this out of the oven. Oh, it's looking all right. Now we can get these put onto a cooling wire, and this is the hardest bit of the whole project. You've got to wait for this to cool down before you can actually cut it into and eat it. Now I did make one mistake. I don't normally bake two loaves that are different. I just thought I'd do this as demonstration purposes, and it didn't really work out for me because my loaf rose into the shelf that was above it and crushed it a little, so I had to do a little rearranging halfway through. But it should still taste okay. So I've been very disciplined. I've managed to wait a couple of hours until this is all nice and cooled down. So we're going to start with my loaf that unfortunately got a bit squished. Definitely a stupid mistake. Oh, but that looks a nice, light, airy loaf. Yeah, maybe not the prettiest, but I think it's going to taste good. So, I'm going to have a little test of this, and then maybe it's a sandwich or some beans on toast for me tonight. The great thing about bread is it freezes wonderfully. I'll stick one of these loaves in the freezer, then I can enjoy it later in the week. So, thank you everyone.